Thank you for joining us for our webinar today, Making the Leap to Online and Mobile Qualitative Research. Kathy Fitzpatrick from iTracks will be providing the presentation about the recent online discussion board that she conducted. Kathy brings with her an impressive career in marketing research and extensive experience ranging from research design and field operations to client relationship management. She obtained a Bachelor of Science in Psychology and Physical Education from the Elmhurst College in Illinois. Kathy has over 30 years of experience in the marketing research industry, where she has been a leader in both the research and sales facets of the business. In her roles as director, consultant, and vice president, she has over 13 years of market research fieldwork, research and development experience, and over 17 years of experience building extraordinary client relationships across many companies and industries. Kathy has a vast understanding of research methodologies within both qualitative and quantitative, using online technologies and video-based research. I commend Kathy on her recent qualitative project and look forward to the presentation of her findings. Go ahead, Kathy.
Well, good day, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're really looking forward to sharing what we have built out for this particular webinar. We'd like to start by giving an overview of the iTracks company, so who we are and what compelled us to really kind of start delving into this part of our business. But to start with, iTracks, as some of you may be familiar with us, others may not, we are an independent market research technology company that developed our first online focus groups in the year 2000. Since then, we've been an industry leader in mobile research, consistently building and advancing the technology as it relates to qualitative online and mobile. We are an industry leader in advancing video-based research, so some of that was brought up during this qualitative session that we built out. We also have a full suite of qualitative platforms that we regularly offer to our clients. So as a really quick overview, there are some platforms that all of you will be readily aware of, some who are newer may not, but we have 3 real-time technologies that we support, as well as a longitudinal asynchronous platform. So our asynchronous platform is simply our bulletin board, typically runs 2 to 3 days, longitudinal, allowing people to come in when it's convenient for them. Our real-time products are our iTracks Chat. iTracks Chat is simply text-based real-time solution so that your participants are all at the same day, at the same time, interacting with a moderator and one another. We have our iTracks Video Chat, much the same in that it's on the same day at the same time. People are interacting, but they use webcam rather than keyboard and text. And then our newest edition, which many of you may not have even experienced or gone through a demo of yet, and that would be our iTracks Telephone IDI. It's a software solution built to help you and your clients with telephone interviews from a management perspective, from providing conference lines, backroom observation, and sharing media within a telephone interview. So if that is of interest to you, this is kind of a sidebar, but certainly we can share, just reach out to us and somebody will share that with you. The goal of the company is really to make it easy for all parties to participate in this kind of research. So the products that we've built out that I just shared with you were really based off of our own experience in hosting online research. So we do really tend to look to our clients for the next best thing. So what is missing? What do we need to do next? What do our clients need us to focus on? We certainly always focus on the needs of the researcher, moderators, client observers and participants as well, allowing new research to be conducted, perhaps not using traditional methods, and being able to dive deeper when needed. Some background information. The actual project that we did was allowing for people to filter in based off of an invite that we sent out into a bulletin board that was designed to really kind of probe into and get some feedback from people in the industry, researchers, moderators, end user clients, who really would like to better understand what the evolution of qualitative research has been and how they can be part of it if they're not already. And if they are already part of it, being able to help their clients understand everything that perhaps is out there based to creating good project design and good project data. So the evolution resulted in rapid advancements in technology. So keeping track of what's going on, who are all the new vendors, what are all the new tools, what are all the new capabilities. There's a whole lot that goes into the technology in our industry, and we wanted to really get a good feel for that. Because there's been such a rapid advance and so many new players in the industry, it's resulted in some new challenges and new barriers. The perception is that, and the reality is that software companies have indeed made the leap. You know, there's those of us who are involved in the software side of things and the technology side of things, for the most part, cut their teeth, if you will, in the research industry. So taking that background and looking at how we can help generate better, new, different ways of communicating with participants to find out what the information is and the data that we need to collect. Pardon me. Perhaps what we saw was that researchers, agencies, and users are not quite making the leap with us. So as the technology and as the software advances, are we as software companies and technology-driven companies doing the best we can to enable you and your teams to understand what it is, how it's conducted, and how it fits into your business mix? So we wanted to engage the qualitative research community to find out what struggles there were, what successes you've had, and how you've made the transition to coordinating and conducting online and mobile research methods. So the objectives of this project were to determine which online and mobile qualitative solutions are working, which ones are not working, and why. With successful qualitative research, dependent on that methodology, support, and design, how do you as researchers wade through the options? You know, there are so many options out there. We wanted a good understanding of what's challenging for you, when you have to go and design an online study, where do you even start if you've not already begun the ability, or if you have the capabilities of doing online or mobile research? What are and have become challenges and obstacles for researchers as you tackle these designs? What are the benefits of using an online or mobile qualitative to your clients? I think a lot of times we as the research community and as the technology companies recognize the value and the benefits. How does that translate to your client side? You know, how is it making it better for them? How is it making it easier for them? And how is it making them challenging? Because I think all of those things came out when we conducted this board. And then, you know, some kinds of recommendations for transitioning to online methods. The purpose of the board was to really understand where people are at and figure out ways that we as a technology side of the business can help transition your teams and your clients to online methods when they are necessary and when they will provide value. And then how we can help address those things. How can we help you make sure that what you're sharing out to your clients or your internal stakeholders make a difference, and how we can help effectively change that when it needs to be. And then how can technology build on the current successes? So we really kind of tackled the good, the bad, and the ugly in this particular board. It was not driven to give solutions, as more to collect the ideas and the thought process and kind of engage people in conversation. So the methodology that we used was an online bulletin board. Our researchers were recruited using direct mail, targeted social media. Once the participants completed a screener, they were integrated directly with the online bulletin board focus group. So for those of you who participated and may be on the call right now, I'd love to say thank you for your participation. What you shared with us and what you discussed amongst each other was extraordinarily valuable and kind of lifted the curtain a bit between what happens technologically and what happens from the research side. Where are their gaps? Where are their needs? So the people that participated did a wonderful job. It was once they accepted the invitation, they landed on a home page, if you will. They were asked a couple of questions there. I think we opened it like on a Tuesday or a Wednesday once the invites went out, and then everybody was invited to come back in the following week for a couple of days as well. We recruited for this particular group 3 different groups of research people. The first was moderators and researchers. So the moderators and researchers kind of classified themselves into one of 2 groups. They were either newbies, if you will, those who were new to the online qualitative solutions, and then those who were experienced. The agencies and the research companies and the moderators kind of fell into those 2 groups. And then we had a 3rd group, which was the brand and end users, and they kind of spanned the gap between all different levels of experience. But we felt their issues and their concerns might be a bit different than those of suppliers and moderators. There were quite a few people who participated. You can see we had 28 people who were new, 27 people who were experienced, and 17 brand and end users. So I have to say, for those of you listening today who are moderators and actually drive the research process, I feel your pain when you have a lot of people in a bulletin board. It was an eye-opening experience from an analytic perspective, as well as just moderating the boards and keeping up with everything that was going on. So kudos to the moderators out there. The methodology we used was a simple bulletin board. It allowed for the researchers that participated and the end users who participated to actually experience the board as a participant. So they were able to log in, they were able to answer questions. We asked that they spend between 30 and 45 minutes for 3 days. Most of them did that. There was, as you would expect with researchers, there was a lot of interaction, people going back and forth, connecting with one another, follow-ups to each other, answering questions in great depth and great detail. We had the groups discussing amongst their own groupings for the first couple of days, and then we kind of opened it up for everyone to interact when we asked some of the bigger questions. Yeah. So following the discussion, a transcript of the results was downloaded, and then I spent quite a bit of time filtering the data, creating codes and tags in the notes section so that I could then understand what was being said, what was being shared, and kind of pull together some of the options. What you're going to see here once we get into the actual data, this is not a traditional research project. It really was designed to to communicate with the research community, find out what you're thinking, find out where we need to help. So we're going to go through those results here very shortly. What I found really interesting as I went through the data was that I guess in my mind, my hypothesis was if you were newer to our industry, you might be a little less experienced, not only in qual, but certainly in online qual, and that those people who were in the industry for a longer period of time had begun the transition and had made, if you would like to call it, the leap into online qualitative. And what I found was quite different. In the newbies group, if you will, people who found themselves to be less experienced, there were, and by the way, this is a self-reported number, so the numbers you see here don't add up to the total people in each of the groups, because we asked them less in a Q&A and more in a if you want to share how long you've been in the industry, we certainly would like to hear that. But there were 10 people who shared their information in the newbies group, if you will, that had 10 and more. And I'm telling you, there were people with 25 and 30 years of experience that considered themselves still to be new to the online qualitative and mobile research design. Then if we look at the experienced people, they fell pretty much as they logged in. Again, we had a preponderance of people who had 10 or more years of experience conducting qual, but in this case, their experience lent them to being a little bit more informed about online qual, both mobile and online. And then the end users were very much split. I would say that for the most part, the end users were less likely to be really understanding the online and mobile qual discussion, but they had some really great questions and they were able to provide some really good input. So let's talk a little bit about the summary, and then we'll get into more detail. Barriers and challenges remain. As much as we on the software technology side have felt that, you know, our researchers and moderators and end users all are pretty well understanding how to do online qual, how to design online qual, not being, and it's part of their product mix, we found that that was less likely to be true, and more likely people tend to go back to their more traditional methods of conducting qualitative. There will always in our industry be a place for traditional qualitative research. There are just certain topics that lend themselves to being in person. The challenge is beginning to know when you can start moving things online, why you would move them online, and the benefits of doing so. So some of the barriers and challenges that we saw were many of the research companies and moderators struggled to know how to educate their clients. So they may be on board with, you know, seeing the value for specific designs when to involve online qual, but their clients tend to shy away from it. They've either not done it before, or maybe they had one really terrible experience with it. But the bottom line is that clients tend to like what they like and can be very traditional when it relates to qualitative. So you have to do a little work there as it relates to educating. Another barrier or challenge that continued to be brought up was technology problems. So in the vast marketplace of online technology solutions, problems tended to be the scary part for everyone. You know, when technology fails, you're at a loss. Your project can be a bit compromised. So that was a big issue for everybody. And then finding the right software. Once again, with all of the options out there right now, how does one find the correct software to solve their online needs? The final thing is client buy-in. It's a little bit different than educating clients. Educating clients is really letting them know, having those discussions, bringing your clients into a demo to show them what it's all about. The difference there is that clients need to also buy in. So they may know that there's online qual, but are they buying into it? Are we presenting value? Are we presenting good design as it relates to helping you as the researcher get your clients excited about it? And then we heard lots of moments of terror where people were involved in projects and things began to disintegrate and blow up. Some of it was technology driven, some of it was project management driven. There are all kinds of things that can happen that without a good plan can strike terror to the heart of any researcher and any technology company. But we didn't want to shy away from that, because in order for us to learn, we needed to find out from you guys what happens, what has happened, why are things creating situations for you and your teams that may make you take a step aside before you really jump in. And then there were moments of delight. To quote the Big Bang Theory, bazinga. Those moments when you get excited, when your client's excited, when you've delivered something that has really rocked their world, really showing, bringing the voice and the face of the customer into, or their participants into the reports that you create. All those kinds of moments really kind of salvaged yeah, I really want to do this and I'm really excited, and the few times I did do it, here's what really worked really, really well. And then we wanted to know what solutions can be built. We asked some questions about, gosh, what's missing? If you could design a technology or a software that would really help meet your needs, what would that be? What would you like to do now that you currently cannot? So we have recommendations for software development, and we also have recommendations for researchers, agencies, and brands. All of this came from the board and from the people that participated. So let's start by talking about barriers and challenges. In terms of educating clients, the way I've built this presentation, because this was so driven by you, the researchers, I wanted to make sure that the findings were driven by the people that participated. So bearing with me, I'm going to actually read these quotes rather than having you do it while I'm talking. So the first thing we heard was the largest challenge is not recommending or determining a method. The largest challenge is in dealing with clients whose brief includes a method. They often choose a method based on what they did last time and their budget rather than the objective and needs at hand. So this came from one of our newbies that was in the group, and the challenge of being new to online qual and then having a brief come in that says, I want to do 4 focus groups. And so without having that background in qualitative online or mobile, the ability for a researcher or a moderator to switch gears with the client is very challenging for people. How do I educate my client that there's more to the world than a focus group, or more to the world than an IDI in person? The next quote that I pulled out was, I've tried online bulletin boards and live groups, but I wish I had more tools to go online and convince my clients about its benefits. So that speaks to what we as the software technology companies can do to help you engage your clients, help you build your business. What do we need to do? What do we need to provide to you? And then finally, stakeholders don't really have a good idea on what it will take to get the answers to their business decisions. They think they can just jump in, do a survey, but if you really outline the issues and map out what the process to get those answers are, they often choke on the overall budget. So this came from the brand side. So when a stakeholder comes to a researcher within the brand and says, I want to do this research, from the brand position, it's like, well, just go do a survey or go do a couple focus groups. We can get our answers that way. But the researchers within the brand teams really kind of think out what that process is, and when they look at qualitative and they want to build out a qualitative solution, occasionally those brand stakeholders get a little antsy when it comes to budget. So, you know, how do we look at that? How do we fine-tune the design, if you will, to make it easier for the stakeholders to actually engage in this kind of work? The next thing we're going to talk about are the barriers and challenges as it relates to technology problems. Challenges are technology glitches. Here's the first one, talks a perfect example in that the corporate email blocked the image box that contained the login password. Respondents are often not tech savvy enough to figure out how to overcome those issues. And then recordings not being able to be accessed later or audio files not being in a format that can be transcribed. So on the brand side, you know, being able to enable and share with those stakeholders how technology can help as opposed to being a problem. So making sure that your technology provider has tech support, that they've got people on hand to fix problems as they come up, maybe to do a soft launch. Those things can sometimes help avoid a technology problem. Technology itself is sometimes a barrier. The fails we've had include failure of the platform on a technical standpoint, or failure of the provider to assist us and the respondents in a timely road when they hit roadblocks. Again, this comes from an experienced researcher who challenges the technology side of our business to come up with some solutions that work for them and nobody feels like they're being left out on a cliff jumping off with no support beneath them. Which brings us to our last quote here. Support is important. Technical issues can arise out of the blue. We've had some bad experiences with that. Platform design and ease of use would be their number 2. So again, from the newbie, this is a person who probably has done 1 or 2 qualitative online. They don't feel that they're experienced, but yet they've suffered some challenges that have caused them to maybe take a step back a bit and understand why these things happen and how they can go about solving them. The next thing on barriers and challenges was choosing software. So we had a lot of comments here, and I decided not to put a lot of them in there because I think it really speaks to itself. First off, with the experienced researcher who understands all of the ins and outs of what technology can provide, their feeling was that a demo with a client or with their own teams can sometimes only skim the surface and the real learning happens in application. Some of the solutions, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, are, you know, perhaps doing a pilot project for everyone so that they all know, having a good training session, making sure that if you need to do it 2 and 3 times, that you really get into it and understand it so that when you're in the live project, you don't have any surprises. And then the second quote was really, I'm always trying to find pilot projects we can conduct instead of simply simulating a demo. So being able to have a team at a research company do a simulated project where they can take that data from an actual project they conducted and then share it out with their clients as they want to demo and show further capabilities. That's always good when you think about your client base and understand what kinds of projects your clients tend to like to do, and building out a pilot project would work very well. Now we're going to go into this whole difference between educating your client and client buy-in. Again, it's really understanding if you and your teams, supported by your tech supplier, have done a good enough job explaining the benefits. I think that's one of the challenges we heard frequently was, okay, I get it. I can do geographic dispersion. I can have people come in when it's a time that's convenient for them. Sometimes a lower incidence is easier in a bulletin board or in an online real-time session. I don't have to have my teams flying around. They get that part of it. But at the end of the day, it's about the research. It's about the quality of the data that's collected. And simply put, we need to do a really good job of explaining that value to your client. So if you feel that rather than doing an in-person focus group would be a better idea perhaps to do an online session, how do we make that leap with our clients to get their buy-in and say, I know you really want to do a focus group, but I really think we should take this avenue instead. The next thing I'd like to take us through is the moments of terror. I found these to be extraordinary. I mean, we really pared this back, but I have to tell you, when you see and hear what people have gone through, it's a real wake-up call for technology companies to put ourselves in your shoes for a quick minute and say, oh my gosh, how can we help make sure these things don't happen? And if they do happen, how do we have workarounds to prevent them from happening or solve them as they're happening? Some of the things that people really pointed out with was participation. You have a project recruited, and whether it's with respondents or client participation, your first moment of terror might be, oh my God, what if nobody comes? What if people don't show up? What if I have a board and I'm supposed to have 15 and I only have 8? How do we engage and encourage that participation was prevalent for everyone. Another big deal that people pointed out, and I think we have some discussion left about this, is lack of client participation. Sometimes that whole part about, oh gosh, I don't have to fly around, I don't have to be away from my family, I don't have to take time away from my office. All of those things are exciting for a client when they start doing online research, but it doesn't excuse them from being part of the research. So how do we as a research community engage the client? Do we sit down maybe when you start having, let's say, a board, and every morning you sit down with the client for half an hour and go through some of the results. Make sure that they come in, that they look at the board, that they make notes with you. All of those things are important because the client doesn't get to opt out here. As much as we'd like for us to make the client experience as easy as possible, when you do research, there's a required element of being involved in the research. So that seemed to come up a lot. Unresponsive participants, those who log in, but then they don't really contribute. They have 1 or 2 word sentences. They don't really feel like they're engaged. So, people talked about, do we have to do a better job with articulation screens? We do a good job of it when we do in-person stuff, but can we, and is there an opportunity to improve that for an online session? The next thing I experienced, even though I talk about it all the time, when I had the discussion board, there were almost 60 or 65 people who participated, at least through half of it, probably 40 to 45 who did the entire thing. So there was just so much data. Getting through that data brings us again to where, a little bit in a few minutes, we'll talk about this in more detail, but how do we as technology companies come to your aid here? How do we help you sift through this data? What tools are needed to sift through the data? I mean, I used our coding system and taking notes, and yet it was still a lot of data to go through. And, as looking at the online, more data is not always better data. I will agree with the challengers who brought some of that up, but for the most part, there's a lot of really good data. So how do you sift through and make your decisions and create PowerPoints and share those findings back to your client, discovering the aha moments when in a focus group you've got 2 hours with 12 people perhaps, whereas in a bulletin board you might have 25 people, which is probably where I would tell you to cap it off based to my experience, but there's a lot of really good data. So how do you sift through it? So I think I've made the point there. I think everybody's probably in agreement. If you've done bulletin boards particularly, you know that there's a lot of data to go through. For a quick second, let's talk about the Bazinga moments, when we were happy, when people were so excited. There was a lot of mention about the video capabilities, being able to engage participants using video, being able to then pull those insights into a PowerPoint so that as a community, a research community, we're not losing sight of our participants. So text is great. You can certainly dive in. Moderators have really good ways of pulling things out. But video is an awesome experience for participants when handled appropriately within the design. And it gives your client a really good feel for who's participating. It brings that full circle back to the participant. Another Bazinga moment that I thought was interesting was being a statement that one of our participants made, that it was so great to have people with different possibilities be able to communicate with one another and work towards a common goal. They could not have had a session like this one in a face-to-face setting. The exchange of very different yet somehow common perspectives was highly productive and led to important changes in my client's approach to design. I think at the end of the day, we need to remember that the research we conduct needs to help your client make decisions. So looking at the design, looking at how we can effectively communicate with participants, with whomever the client needs to talk to, and how do we get to that helpful, here's what you need to do, here are the directional things that we can give to you to help you make decisions. Okay, so the next thing that I want to talk about, I want to make sure we're on a good time feed here, is what is missing. I could have probably had 4 slides here on what is missing. I kind of looked through the data and found the points that seem to be mentioned frequently by all of the participants, from new people to experienced people to brand people. And it really comes back to the same thing, back-end analysis. I need to create back-end analysis that wows my clients, makes it fast and easy for me to build. Here's a statement here. Oftentimes I feel like I'm wading through it all. They love sentiment analysis, easy exporting, report creation, and easy to read comparisons. We heard from a lot of people that they'd like to build their reports right in the platform, so that they can create and build video and create their charts and build it right in, and that they don't have to have these major huge files for their reports to deliver back. They can direct their clients right to the platform, they open up the report, and they go from there. Another suggestion was to make it easier for participants to give feedback. So if you're using a mobile app, or you have a study that's being driven by mobile devices, or even on their laptops or their tablets, reminders that might pop up to keep them engaged. Another thing that seemed to be missing for most people, and again, let's take a step back. There may be things that are stated as missing here that some of you may have found somewhere, but these are the things that were brought up from the population at large within this board that they couldn't find, or they were found to be missing, or lacking in the abilities that the benefit was said that it could do. So another thing that was mentioned frequently was robust text analytic features, customizable coding, and sentiments to gauge and help moderators slice and dice through the findings. Next, we have video and audio editing and captioning capability for reporting. Very nicely asked, very much, please. That would make my life so much easier. Video uploads are a large part of participant responses in typical studies, but beyond downloading them, It would be nice to have more tools for analysis, transcriptions, editing tools, etc. Another thing missing is, again, the text analytic features, customizable coding, but that was mentioned several times. Better data categorization and marking, verbal, text mining tools, anything really to aid analysis. Clients expect detail. Another statement was back-end analysis tools are remedial and not very helpful. Interactive widgets. Click on the screen, explain your score, create your own ad by dragging and dropping the elements you would like to see, a collage tool. So those are all the things that, not all, but that's kind of a good summary of what we heard our participants in the board express that they would love to see, that they believe is missing right now. Solutions that can be built. So recommendations for software development. From a software development technology perspective, if you're not comfortable yet, if you're still just beginning this leap into online qual and mobile qual, start with smaller clients. Don't pick out your biggest client and say, hey, here's what we're going to do for you. Start with a smaller client, a client that you know well, that you can kind of learn with and share with them your learnings. Look for pilots to do, whether they're from your company or from a client. Looking for those pilots to do a small sample and really get to know the technology helps significantly. We can also provide demo help for your meetings. So your technology companies should be able to come with you virtually into a meeting, represent you as your software provider, and really walk your clients through. So rather than you trying to explain it, your software solution team should be able to help you with that. Maybe provide better help with your marketing, branding. What do you need to say? What do you need to share with your clients? Rather than struggling to build something that you're less familiar with, you know the research, you know how to moderate, you know how to analyze. Marketing an online tool may not be your strong suit. So sometimes people don't get off the mark because they struggle here. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to say it. I don't know if I'm being honest and truthful with my clients because I don't really know the answer. The next thing that we can help with as a software development and technology community is providing sandboxes for practice. So allowing you and your teams to come in, sometimes even inviting your clients in to a mock session, if you will, but it's an actual place that you can build out a board, or you can have a pretend video chat to be able to practice and get familiar and comfortable. We as researchers, the worst thing in the world is to walk into something and feel unprepared or not be able to feel confident, because we can't be worrying about knowledge of the technology when we're supposed to be focusing on the data that we need to collect, the connection we need to make with our participants. And then, obviously, as a tech company, we can always, as an industry, be more consistent in our tech support. So, recommendations continuing for software development would be better training, providing mock sessions. So, in other words, what we just completed in the data collection of the bulletin board that we generated was really kind of a mock session, even though we were collecting data. But it allows, one of the biggest things we heard was that researchers want to know what their participants experience. So what are they going through? What are they looking at? What are they seeing? So maybe providing some of those kinds of sessions to you as a research community really would get you a better feeling for how these things work and how to build them and how to design them. We heard loud and clear, back-end solutions are needed. And then perhaps even some better capabilities around moderator training. Not training how to moderate, but how to build a good guide. How do you, because it's different to build a guide for an online session as opposed to an in-person session. we have a couple of documents on the iTrack side that, you know, how to build a guide for fingers rather than in person. When you use the online video, certainly that helps to get that engagement going. But, you know, what do we need to do for the moderators to help you understand how to build out guides that are applicable and work really well? Then we thought, and there were some solutions that can be built that were recommendations for researchers, agencies, and brands. So what we heard that you guys can do. Take time to explore platforms and functions in greater detail before selling it to a client, familiarizing yourself with tech support capabilities, real-time availabilities of fixes, so kind of helping you through that moment of terror. Demoing the platform via the respondent view. Sometimes your clients like to see what their participants are going to see. Once you start looking at it, you may realize what might be missing in your discussion guide. Once you kind of go in and do it your own self, you know, it's interesting to see how you react to your own guide even when you have to answer it in the online world. And then, you know, building that offline relationship with the participants ahead of time. Several of our participants mentioned this, that they actually have teams of people that spend time on the phone engaging with participants before starting the research project. So there is that connection. Making sure, obviously, the guide is user-friendly. Using incentives to award and encourage participation. Obviously, everybody has incentives in Qual. How you use those incentives can be different based to the design. A really good suggestion by one of the participants, actually a couple, said, have days where there are no questions posted. The mandatory task on a specific day is for people to come in and read each other's each other's comments and reply. So really kind of pushing that interaction and getting people to communicate with one another. And the moderator, of course, will come in and ask questions as well and encourage that. Encouraging people to use video was another thing we heard frequently. If you want people to use video yourself. Welcome people with a video. If you want them to show you something in their home, you can kind of walk them through what you'd like them to do. I had one moderator who was working to better understand snow removal. He started his video, welcome to the project, and he was standing in front of a big, huge heap of snow out in front of his yard. And he went into the garage and said, okay, now I have to decide what I'm going to do to get rid of the snow. So it kind of got the mood going, and people were thought it was pretty amusing that he suffered the same problems that they did. So the last couple of seconds here, I'm going to talk to you about some conclusions. There was a great interest from everybody who participated in the board to better understand the technology side of qualitative research. We found that more work needs to be done from the software company side to better understand your needs. So rather than just saying, okay, here's a great new way to collect data, you know, we keep pushing or keep developing things to collect the data, you know, or do polling questions. But what you guys really said loud and clear, I need analytic tools. I need back-end support. So we need to do a better job as software technology companies to make sure we're always taking that pulse, become a better part of the research community rather than just, oh yeah, we're the technology company. And then through the use of demos, training, sandbox options, marketing materials, we can certainly help you bridge the gap in the comfort level of usage. So in essence, the loudest thing that we heard, as I just said, was the back-end analytic support across all technologies or most technologies was weak and needs better tools. But yet there was a love affair happening with video data collection, storage, clipping, and I think it's because as researchers we want to make sure we never lose sight of who that participant is, sharing who that person is back to our client. Before we get into Q&A, I want to make sure that we extend this invitation to everyone about the ability to participate in a post-forum opportunity, so post-webinar. So what we're going to do is open that board back up again and allow for those of you who either participated today or who asked for this presentation to be sent to them to participate in a couple. It doesn't mean that you have to come in every day for 3 days. We're going to leave it as an open forum. We'll leave that open forum through probably early next week in order to allow you and your people and your researchers and to find some common ground and to kind of go back and forth with one another and experience, if you did not participate the first time, experience that online bulletin board as a participant. So now that I think I almost made 45 minutes, I'm a little bit over. Do we have any questions?
So I do have some questions. So to get us started off, Kathy, one of the questions was, do you have suggestions for engaging client observers during online focus groups?
You know, I think there are several ways that I heard through this discussion board that people used. One was to engage people on a daily basis for a 15-20 minute discussion about what was heard the day before. Another has been to send out emails. Don't be afraid to push your client into participation. So send out an email, dump in a video. You know, here's a little snippet of what we heard in the board yesterday. Maybe give them an example. You may have done a polling question and you can download the chart and put it into an email. So keeping a client engaged, making sure that in your pre-planning stage you mention these things. Once a client knows that you're going to be aware of what their participation level is and that will affect the end data, they tend to become a little more involved. But you do have to do a little more work because they're just not getting on an airplane and flying somewhere.
Great. Thanks, Kathy. All right, the next question. Do you have any recommendations for training to support the transition to online?
Well, I think that from the iTracks perspective, we have training sessions that are very in-depth, that last about an hour for each one of our products. So if you decide you want to move forward with a bulletin board, we have a team of people headed by Candice Northey, who everybody loves. She's just wonderful, but her and her team will take you through a training session built by components. So if you want to do boards, if you want to do live chat, if you want to do video chat, if you want to go through our telephone IDIs, we have training sessions built out. They're led by a person, and they can include you, your team, your clients, so everybody knows how to use the particular technology. As it relates to bigger picture training, generally speaking, I don't think we oftentimes offer a big training course. That's something we could consider if there was any interest.
Great, thanks, Kathy. Another question here. When first starting online qualitative, which platform is easiest to start with?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know if the word easiest is the right word here, but if it were me, I would start with a bulletin board. And I would start with a bulletin board because it is least like what the client currently does. So in order to really kind of get them disengaged from live and into the online, and it also has the most power. It has the most capability as it relates to tools and being able to create videos and clip videos. So there's a little bit of a learning curve there, but I think that if you can learn it, your clients will be delighted. The other two are probably easier. It's easier to do a chat. It's easier to do a video chat because they most emulate what you currently do in a live session. They're just online, if you will. So I would recommend, and I know that really didn't answer you because you said easiest, but I would recommend you start with bulletin boards.
Great. Thanks, Kathy. Okay, well, we are getting to the end of our session today. I do want to mention a couple of resources that we have. Kathy, if you just want to move to the next slide there. iTrack's website, www.itrax.com, we do have some resources for people looking to learn more about online qualitative. So there's some past webinars and some other documents that can help you with that transition process. And as Kathy mentioned, iTrax does provide training to people looking to move to an online environment as well.